Vice Chair, you are live.
Thank you very much. All right, everybody, welcome to this evening's Planning Commission meeting for Thursday, July 20th. We have a short agenda, but we will go ahead and get started with the with the call to order. If I can have a roll call, please.
Mr. Pline,
Present.
Ms. Pico,
Present.
Mr. Imes,
Here.
Ms. Butler,
Present.
Mr. Waldman,
Present.
Mr. Svakianudis,
Present.
and Mr. Sale.
Here.
Thank you. We have quorum. So we'll go ahead and get started with the items on the agenda. If you can confirm it, you can see that I'm sharing the right screen. Can everyone see the agenda?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, so item 3 is the approval of the agenda. So if everyone can take a review, can I get a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So
I'll
moved.
make a motion to approve the agenda.
Good.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, moving along. Item D on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from July 6th. I have the draft in place. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to review. There's been some edits and changes from the commission. Excuse the noise. If I can get if I can get a motion to approve the July 6th minutes as drafted.
So moved.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Which
And
moves
I'll
us
abstain since I wasn't here.
which moves us along to item 3. The only item on our agenda today is the continuation of the public hearing for the Annapolis Ahead 2040 comprehensive plan. This has been an ongoing public hearing for the last few meetings and will continue on for a few more to open the floor to any public comments and review that comment period. We have received several comments online, several in favor, and quite a bit of dialogue. There have been a series of community events and forums and open houses to inform the public about this agenda item, and the public hearing could continue to be open. Do we have anyone present for public comment?
No, I don't believe we do.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else that would like to speak on this item?
I just have one question for Mr. Lushinsky. Based on the one comment that we received today about the historic nature of the city, just curious if you wanted to comment on where the historic nature of Annapolis shows up in the plan.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I'd be happy to comment on that. So the comment was in reference to the sections of the comprehensive plan, the fact that we've organized the comprehensive plan into the thriving city, the functional city, the adaptive city, and the comment asked, what about the historic city? Fair comment. You know, Annapolis is very well known for our historic district. It's the largest concentration of colonial architecture in the country. It's a major economic asset, cultural asset to the city. There is a lot of coverage of the historic district in this comprehensive plan, goals and dedicated goals and recommendations focus on the historic district in several chapters. The reason why we don't have a whole section of the comprehensive plan dedicated to the historic city is really just because we were looking for a structure that would be a citywide emphasis, something that every resident of the city could relate to, that really applied to every neighborhood of the city. The fact is, something like 85% of the city is not historic. Maybe it's a little bit less than that, but doesn't take away from the fact that historic preservation is a major theme in the comprehensive plan. But we were really looking for cross-cutting themes that, again, would apply to almost every resident or stakeholder in the city. So for folks who are interested in how the comprehensive plan addresses historic preservation and the historic district in particular, we have references to that in the land use chapter. It's chapter 4. In the arts and culture chapter, which I believe is chapter 7 or chapter 8. That's probably where the bulk of the coverage for the historic district and preservation is. In environmental sustainability, in reference to protecting the historic district from climate change impacts. And I believe we have a little bit in community facilities as well, given that that addresses parks and open space, and public water access is a major component of that. So yeah, I mean, that's where you'll find it. I mean, there's no shortage of emphasis on historic preservation, the historic district. It's just kind of woven throughout the plan.
Thanks. That makes perfect sense, and I think that's a good strategy to take to make sure that the major chapters and themes are really relevant to the whole city, like you said. So thanks for addressing that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to kind of clarify that. And I should say that we had a really good robust conversation at the Michael Bush Public Library the other night, on Tuesday night. That was our last in-person meeting, and it was aimed at wards 1 and 2. I mean, that we've been doing these in-person meetings around the city that were oriented to the different wards, and that one had a pretty large showing of downtown residents, and so we had a lot of good questions and comments about downtown Annapolis and the historic district. And we're also going to be visiting with the Ward 1 Residents Association in early August. So I imagine this type of discussion will be at that as well.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Eric, I have a couple of questions.
Yep.
Designated growth areas, page 65 of the plan.
Yeah.
I just need to, I want to understand, first of all, I want to understand physically what these orange areas mean, the crosshatched orange. The one on Old Solomon's Island Road is, I'm a little lost as to where's West Street?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's along the entrance ramp to 50.
Yeah. Yep.
What are the prospects for incorporating that piece?
Well, it's a great question. This is we've actually gotten questions about this exact map at some of our in-person meetings, because there is not, I feel like we do explain in the chapter, but it's still somewhat confusing. The designated growth areas are simply the areas that the city could, in theory, annex into the city, but that's not initiated by the city. And just to be clear, the property owners initiate that process. So it's really hard to predict when and if these properties would ever be annexed into the city. It really relies on the property owner having an interest in doing that. And then the city has to find value in that. In other words, if a property requires a lot of investment to sort of make it serviceable through our infrastructure, it may not make sense. The county also has to, Anne Arundel County has to also approve of the annexation. So it's not an easy thing for any of these properties to become part of the city. We're just simply acknowledging here the properties that would make sense, given that it's really more about helping to service these properties so that it's they might regularize the city's boundary in some cases. It may make it easier for emergency services to get to these places, and from a political kind of a districting perspective, I know that I can tell one of the only reasons why the Annapolis Middle School property is identified here, and that's the triangle located along Forest Drive, is because every time the census is released and the city has to do a redistricting process, the population changes in some parts of the city and we have to balance out the wards, not having that parcel be included in the city makes everything more difficult. It just changes the census boundaries in such a way that it's just makes everything more challenging. But that property would continue to be owned by Anne Arundel County Public Schools, just like every other public school property in the city. So there's very little chance that it would be used for anything other than the school. But it just simply from a kind of political boundary perspective, it makes sense to include as part of the city. So
Okay, yeah, I thought that was the middle school, but okay, I understand now. Moving up to the property along 665 and Old Solomon's Island Road, is that behind the Hyatt property and behind that what's the name of that the thing that we approved with the 4-story townhomes?
It's adjacent. That's, you're referring to the towns at Neal Farm, those townhomes.
So it includes like the Subaru dealership and that sort of headwaters to Crab Creek?
Yes, that's right. That's exactly right. It includes the Subaru dealership and the gas station across the street from the Subaru dealership. And
Why would these people want to get annexed?
a lot of time, one of the only reasons for folks is that water service is cheaper in the city, and you can be on city, so you can be on the city's drinking water and wastewater infrastructure. But that's, it's really case by case. I mean,
All right, it's a long-term play.
yeah.
Okay, and then further down, almost at the intersection of Edgewood Road, is that where the Lidl grocery is? Is that what that little parcel?
Yes, it's
Okay.
the where the proposed Lidl grocery is.
Right.
I believe it's been approved. I don't know the status of that project. But yeah, currently it's in the Anne Arundel County, and then next door to that is a small strip center where the Rita's custard and the Caliente Grill
Right, and faucets, all right.
Yeah.
Okay, and then going down Edgewood Road, there's that weird rectangle down there. What's that?
That is a group of primarily single-family home lots that collectively is called Cars Manor. It's just a sort of unusual in holding within, surrounded by the city. I honestly don't know too much about it other than that.
Okay.
I don't know the history of why it's not in the city currently, but it is not. It seems like it should be, but
Okay, all right. And as you said, you need to designate these things even if nothing's going to happen.
right.
Okay, now moving on. The next question, a little more general, and that is, when I look at, as I read through these goals, performance measures, and so forth, a fair number of them mention the Planning Commission and the Planning Commission making decisions on things and making a decision about whether an application comports with the comprehensive plan.
Mhm.
Where, it's such a big document. You know, I'm a little concerned about like, where do future commissioners and applicants go to say, here's what the comp plan says?
Mhm.
You follow me?
Yeah, I am following. I've been thinking about that a lot as well, because I review projects from time to time as well. As the comprehensive planner for the city, I mean, I don't review every project. I only tasked with reviewing the major site plan projects and the ones that are seeking a special exception. But so I've been thinking about that as well, because I'll have to use this document. The land use chapter is really where I think you would start, because it has a lot of guidance on what is our, first of all, what is the designated future land use for a particular property. That's a good place to start. There's standards for mixed use or generally infill redevelopment. If you go beyond that, if you have a project that has certain type of street frontage or a transportation component, you would want to go to the transportation chapter and say, well, there's a huge emphasis there on improving safety for pedestrians and cyclists, and improving public transit. What could that project do in that regard to meet those goals? And then, environmental sustainability, you could go to those goals and say, well, we do have forest conservation requirements already, but we're trying to expand our tree canopy, for example, and that's something that is discussed at length in the environmental sustainability chapter. And there's a whole dedicated goal to tree canopy expansion and preservation. What could that project do to address that, for example? But I think, you kind of have to look at the project at hand and say, well, what makes this project specific? And then you kind of find the chapters in the comprehensive plan that would address those facets of the project.
Now what happens, pardon me for interrupting, but what happens if the code, the Annapolis City Code, it is not, doesn't have the same language as, for instance, the comp plan does? The comp plan is much more generalized and idealistic, some people may say, but
yeah.
Here's an example, okay? Page 86, performance standards for mixed use development. Distribution of parking into smaller pods and away from primary street frontage.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know that there's anything within our existing code or existing design guidelines that says, smaller pods and away from primary street frontage. How are future planning commissions supposed to deal with this?
Well, so you're absolutely right. I mean, there is, at present, if this comprehensive plan was adopted, there would be a little bit of a disconnect between our existing zoning code and the comprehensive plan. And our intent is to catch up, change our zoning code to better reflect the goals of the comprehensive plan. That would be the next step. But in the meantime, you would have to first look at how our current development regulations hold projects accountable to certain standards, make sure they're meeting those goals. And then I think you can use the comprehensive plan to say, well, this plan was adopted. It recommends these other standards. And I think you simply have to make a judgment like with any project, there's going to be a negotiated solution. It's going to ultimately be some kind of a compromise solution. as a body, you have to make a determination on what's important with the ultimate outcome of that project. But I don't think it's problematic to use the language in this comprehensive plan, should it be adopted, to guide your decision-making. But it can be above and beyond what you're looking at in the zoning code. It just can't probably be the first thing that you look at. I think that's really the way I would think of it. But
Well, I'm concerned about whether things are appealable. You know what I mean? And they said.
no, it's a fair question. It's a fair question. I just, generally speaking, the comprehensive plan, it does not have the same teeth as the zoning code, or which is essentially our development regulations. So it ultimately will be important that if we want to implement the kind of things that you see in this comprehensive plan, we do need to update our zoning code to reflect that. And that's what we talk about in the chapter, the development regulations chapter, where we emphasize what that zoning update might look like. But yeah,
Yeah.
there is some gray area there.
If the code can't say whatever the standards, guidelines, and factors we need to consider are whatever the comprehensive plan of 2023 says. Can't say that, but if it's in language that's strong enough and wide enough for us to say, well, the code says there needs to be, whatever, community linkage or whatever words are used. And we then go to the comp plan to come up with more specific language, then we can say, applicant, you need to do these things. But I don't want to get caught in a situation where the applicant appeals and says, nothing in the code that says I got to have community linkages, whatever they are. You follow me? I'm
Yeah,
I do. I'm a little concerned because I think that future commissions are going to be faced with this.
Yeah, no,
Hopefully.
I agree. I mean, I think that,
okay, it's something to think about. I'm just, for the commissioners as well.
Yeah,
Is
and
to
I
think
can,
about how do we integrate this into the decisions that we make? Because we got big decisions coming up on Eastport Terrace Harbor House and down the line Watergate. Those are going to be two biggies.
the thing to keep in mind with,
Yeah.
those types of projects, they're plan developments. Ultimately, they go through intense amount of community participation, discussion. They're going to be played out over quite a long time, and in that process, that's where I think this comprehensive plan could have a significant role, because it will provide some structure for the kinds of things that should be negotiated as part of the project. They're not going to be the hard and fast requirements per se, but they're going to be the things that would have value to adjacent communities. And that's where I think it's actually going to have quite a bit of influence, because I think in those situations, I think one of the challenges always that, a developer doesn't have, they don't have the sort of guidance until they meet with the community, hear what the community's interests are, and they can try to address those. I would hope the comprehensive plan is kind of like provides a head start on that process, and that's one of the goals. But
well, on the other hand, the stuff in future land use is laid out pretty specifically. The maps are clear. Future land use categories, where are the mixed use that we want? So I think that you're right. I think that it while it's thick and big and long, it's a guide. It's a guide to applicants and commissioners and citizens. That's good. But I'm a little concerned about how the levels of this thing. Okay, that's it. for now. Thanks.
Sure.
Mr. Pine, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think Eric covered eventually what I was going to say for the most part. But, the way we really have to think about this comp plan is it's, the zoning codes really are as is state, and the comp plan is our to be state. And clearly we're at one place, we want to get to the next. And, it's as much a guide for the city and the legislators to help us get from as is to to be, because that has to be done by the legislative body. And so, I think that's one of the really big things. But with respect to the flexibility that things like plan developments give, that's when I think, we would end up pointing to things like, things in the plan that are to be, like connectivity that you mentioned. And if it's a strict, just by the book code kind of review, the consistency with the comprehensive plan probably doesn't really come into play much. It's more when there is flexibility. That's my sense of when it's really going to be of use to us in that regard. But I think you handled, you covered that in a lot of detail. So thanks, Eric.
All right, thanks, Eric. And I think a lot of what we just discussed too is a part of the implementation, right? Once this, moves forward in its process, what does implementation look like for future commissioners and things like that? And that could be any kind of additional guidance documents or so on that allows that to move forward. So it's just something to consider. All right, any other comments? All right, moving on, we will close item E. Item F, any unfinished business or new business? Or any comments or communication you need to push out, Alex?
No, I just, I know Mr. Smith isn't on, but just to mention that I haven't had a chance to go sign the plat for the Willows, but I will do that. I will make arrangements with him to do that. Hopefully that's not holding anything up. It's just a matter of signing the official plat. Then I'll get with him to do that soon.
All right, very good. Seeing no further business, if I can have a motion to adjourn.
Well, can I ask a question before we do that?
Sure.
When's the next meeting? When's the next meeting and what's on the agenda kind of thing?
Aha.
Well, August 3rd. And I think, Eric, isn't there something that you wanted to talk about with respect to bike and pedestrian stuff? I think you
Yeah,
pushed it
that's
to
right. I was planning to have a presentation by one of our consultants who's been working on a bike infrastructure standards document for the city. It's something that was not included in the 2011 bike master plan the city did, and it's not having it has been caused some challenges because we're constant every time there's a discussion about potentially improving a bikeway in the city. There's lots of discussion about what's appropriate, when is it needed, where should we have these improvements, and this document is intended to help clarify that, so it would be an appendix to that bike master plan. And we just wanted to give a presentation and take any questions. I think it should be pretty interesting.
If you have a draft of that available, love to
Yeah.
see it before the meeting so I can ask
Yeah.
questions.
That's a
I
good
would
point.
hope it's similar to what's in the NACDO guides.
It references a lot of other standards that are already out there. And I think that, so the same consultant has also been looking at the feasibility of better connecting downtown to Quiet Waters Park along Bay Ridge Avenue. And they might share a bit of that as well, just to kind of show, in practice, these are some of the ideas and how they would work. But I'll definitely share this in advance. Early next week, I'll send it out, or sometime next week, basically.
Awesome, thanks.
All right. Any other comments or questions? All right, can I get a motion to adjourn, please?
I will make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?